will record this.
And it's not polished for many reasons. One of which is I want this to be interactive, and the other reason is that I would not know how to polish and present this information in as short a time as an hour. So we're going to get done what we can. The important introduction to looking at genetic information, so you can have fun, you can go to 23andMe and it'll tell you things like you probably have blue eyes, which is a lot less helpful than your bathroom mirror, which tells me that I do have blue eyes. It will also tell you what your genetic ancestry is, which is kind of interesting, you know, where you came from. Oh, I do have a little bit of West African, I'm so glad. And your percentage Neanderthal that someone was, I think, did you mention Neanderthals this morning? Anyway, I was thinking about it. So you can tell interesting things like that, but the main thing that you get as a benefit from 23andMe is that once you have your raw data, once they tell Rick that he's finished, he'll be able to sign in and always go through the tool section and either browse or download his raw data. And that's a gold mine for you for as long as we're continuing to pursue scientific research and something comes up, you know, every month in the literature, and it'll be more and more at conferences that we go to. Functional medicine has whole days on genetic interpretation, so you're laying the groundwork for a lot of future information. What I like to look at for myself and with patients are the genes and the gene, so I don't have to review genetics with the people here, but in each gene it has a number of locations, and even a gene that might have 10 locations within it, 10 little sites within it that you're going to get your genome for, we may only understand one or two. And what I mean by understand is that there are clinical correlations with genetic abnormalities and clinical opportunities for intervention that can modify those clinical outcomes. There are a few things that we look at that we can't modify, and I generally ask with a heavy weighted answer if people want to know things like that, such as their ApoE status. So for instance, since we're using, Jeff's volunteered that we're going to look at his genetic results today to go through them, I want to ask Jeff, before I do that, because otherwise I'm going to put mine up, are you comfortable with learning your ApoE status in front of all these people?
Everybody's going to find out if I'm going to drop dead tomorrow.
Okay. So, you know, there are a few things like that, but there are many things that people can actually modify, and that's really the point of doing it. My clinical experience using it is, I've not used it as dramatically as the doctors that, you know, the interventional cardiologist whose website I'll share with you, or the doctors specialize in autism, but I've used it a lot with patients with focused clinical problems, and I've seen good success and good tolerance of the interventions if they're carefully done. So the first tools that I used for looking at 23andMe data was Genetic Gini, and they do both a methylation analysis and a detoxification analysis, and they look like this. So you'll get a methylation analysis that will go through, so the COMT gene has many loci. This Genetic Gini report will only give you 3 of them. Here's the MAO gene that Georgia was just talking about. And some of these I have no understanding of what to do with. And some of them get a no-call reading. Interestingly, you know, this is a continual process of evolving. So, Daryl, you said your 23andMe results are a little bit older. I bet for you, they have a result for BHMT04. The people whose genes I've studied who had it done a long time ago, 23andMe changed the way they did genetic studies a while ago and gave us a lot more usable information and lost some of the information that we don't need so much, such as what BHMT04 looks like.
Actually, Deborah, I do have that, and I've got a red.
Uh-huh,
I do
okay.
too.
So, and what about what about all 3 of those BHMTs?
Yeah, but results for all of those.
And what are all 3 of them?
4 and 8 are 2 is green and 4 and 8 is red.
So unlike any other time you're in school, the minus is a good finding in this case. Minus in green means you have the wild type genotype. Yellow means you got a good gene from mom or a bad one from, a good gene from one of your parents, a bad gene from the other. A red means you got a bad gene from both parents. But what does that mean? That means that in one location, which in concert with other locations produces an enzyme for your body to use, in one location you're not performing optimally. It does not contribute optimally to the production of that enzyme. What does that mean about your life? Not necessarily anything. So epigenetics still prevails head and shoulders over genetics. So I would never do this on a first visit with somebody unless I knew they already had a healthy lifestyle. The perfect example being I had a patient who every one of her tests on this panel and the one that we're really going to look at, I looked at them and I had to look at her and laugh. I said, "You should be the most anxious person I know." But you're not. You're the most mellow person I know. I wonder if spending the last 40 years as a Buddhist monk has had anything to do with it. So she found the perfect epigenetic modification for a genetic genotype that may or may not have ever expressed itself in a phenotype of anxiety. She skated, and you can too. You can modify even the ones that we can't modify. We can't change the outcome. I can't change your ApoE genotype, but we can definitely change whether you're going to be falling in the dropping dead category or the staying alive category.
So you want the genetic gene and it imports your information from 23?
Yes, so if you asked it to do a methylation analysis, but this is not the one I'm going to just show you this because a lot of websites will have this. They'll just ask you to connect with 23andMe, and if you've already logged into 23andMe, it'll just go right there and say, how do you feel about sharing your personal information is being requested? How do you feel about this? And I've done this for maybe a couple hundred patients, so I just always grant access to myself to their genetic information. If patients, I think Carol said she did this. I encourage my patients who are wary about privacy, and I don't at all guarantee that this is 100% safe. Make up a name, generate a Gmail account, and write it down.
This is what I did. My name is Finn Stormtrooper.
Now we know. You've blown the whole thing.
Blown the whole thing. No, I mean, really, I'm not worried about privacy as far as like 23andMe, like releasing data. It's more like people maliciously hacking into theirs and getting the data.
Absolutely. So, if you wanted me to look at your genes, you would share Finn Stormtrooper, your password, and then somewhere along the way you actually generate another word, like if a secondary clue, and that's used for one of the websites that I'll show you. So you can generate both the methylation and the detoxification report from 23andMe, and I still actually use these sometimes with people because this gene, for instance, this is the detoxification panel, which talks about the health of some of the genes I referred to in my talk about hormones. The CYP1B, the cytochrome P450 enzymes in this 1B1 category have a lot to do with detoxifying estrogen. And you see I've got 2 yellows and 1 green, which isn't so good, so I should eat lots of cruciferous vegetables, which I kind of already did because I told you my mother had breast cancer. Anyway, a lot of these in the middle I don't look at too much because they have to do with drugs, and I don't give people drugs. But these are the ones that start with GST have to do with how well you produce glutathione. And the report that I like the best, that we're going to go to next, doesn't report on this GSTT gene, which is either present or absent. So having it present is good. It compensates for some lousy glutathione production that I evidently have based on these 2 genes here. which did interestingly correlate very well with, so I eat obviously a really healthy diet. I live out in the country, you know, I'm not exposed to EMFs very much. And I did the Geneva Diagnostics Nutritional Evaluation Panel, and my glutathione levels were low. So I thought that was the phenotypic expression of this genotype, as my antioxidant levels were kind of low too. And this SOD2 is superoxide dismutase. So that's the things that you would supplement yourself with: curcumin and resveratrol. It's freshly colored vegetables antioxidant function.
Is there like a cheat sheet to what each of these genes?
Yeah, I'll show you a little bit. There's a couple cheat sheets.
All right, I'm like,
Right. So the report that I really like to use is through MTHFRsupport.com. And if you haven't already done it, they call their report Sterling's app. And you can order your report, but to really help walk you through it, you go down to Getting Started. And they essentially help you get your genome from 23andMe, get it on your desktop, and then you order a report. And the report that it generates is...
Sterling app.
Right, so you go to Sterling's app,
The first
Getting
view
Started.
report- Oh, view report on the top. That, you wanted to show them?
Well, I think I already have yours opened here, but is this yours? Yeah, here it is. So, no, that's Darius. Oh, here's yours. Right here, here's yours, Jeff. So it gives you instead a report that is 44 pages long. And no, everything. And we'll just go through the different categories. And then at the very end, it reminds you where these happen functionally in your body. So phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox. So phase 1 are those enzymes that we talked a little bit about in the hormone talk, and we just talked a little bit about on the detox panel. And over here, all the glutathione related ones. But you see, it doesn't mention the GSTT because it's not on this report. It's only on, there's 2 things that Genetic Gini does that this report doesn't do. But other than that, this report is great.
which is GSST, what's the one?
GSTM and GSTP.
So do you want the GSTT to be present?
You want it to be, well, GSTT is the one that is either present or not present, and you want it present. And you can tell the cheat sheet is that the box is green.
Right, that's what I think.
Yeah. So the first whole section of the MTHFR support report is on phase 1 liver detoxification. So say, let's see, say I'm telling you, oh, from my information, let's see, I can tell you CYP, so let's see, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet, which is, this is the report that I give to patients. 3 generations, prepared, put their name in it. And in the report, I go through the methylation genes that we understand and the detoxification genes, and I tell people what they mean. So in very brief, abbreviated form. So the important thing about the detoxification genes that we mentioned a little bit about is that they all work together. And if you have a very weak area in one, not only do you need to support it, but so for instance, CYP1A1, which is these first 2 here, we can read over into my report I have to patients. I tell people that it detoxifies hydrocarbons. So where do we get hydrocarbons in our life? We smoke, we breathe them, we walk outside and cars are going by, and we grill our food and eat barbecue. So somebody who's all great, and let's look at Jeff's, CYP1A1, which is just the first 2 lines, his are green. I would say to Jeff, you can barbecue your food, but if a lot of these other detoxification pathways were red, I'd tell you still need to be careful about how you prepare your food. And whoever said it yesterday, the way we prepare our food has a lot to do with how healthy or not healthy it is for us. When are we going till?
We are going to 11:50.
Okay.
Deborah, one thing, if you go to the MTHFR website, the
Oh,
actual
right.
report, you can click on the abnormals and it gives you links to videos and all kinds of information.
When you go through view report, is that the one?
Yes.
That's when you were telling about.
So this costs $30 to get this report done. through
It
that.
costs $30 to get the report, and then you have access to all this.
Yeah.
I just discussed, I just started using this website about a month ago, so I'll show you the tools that I've used to train myself, and Jeff added this one, which that you can actually get. So, logged in. Well, I'm going to show you what I know, and you can walk yourself through when you get your report, and I have a lot of patients' reports loaded in here. You can view the report, and then you can either download information or view it that tells you more about what that gene means and how you would make an intervention. Let's see. I'm going to just walk you through these other websites that I use. This one's fun. This is athletogen.com. This is totally free. I suggest you do this as your first, when you get your information, and it will give you, it'll tell you what kind of an athlete you're supposed to be and how you respond to caffeine. And again, this is stuff you already know. So when I look at food, it says I can diet. I guess I can't blame the fact that I'm not responding to diet. I have a high sensitivity to caffeine. And they have a little icon over here. If you have a trophy, it means you're in the most favorable genetic circumstance. If you have little balance symptoms, it means you're kind of normal, you have normal sensitivity. And then they have something that looks like an alarm. I have, for instance, a high vulnerability to tendon injury. So this is a little light bulb or alarm that goes off, which is probably why my fibula subluxes when I try and do lunges, Daryl. See? It's because I have a high vulnerability to tendon injury. Actually, that would be ligament, and I'm just sort of balanced with ligament. So this one's kind of fun, and it's free, and you can tell your patients about that one. Prometheus generates a report that links you just a little bit to the information available about each gene. So, don't leave. So it tells me I'm female. It gives you, it goes through the individual genes, and you can read a little bit about them. I have a congenital disorder of glycosylation, which I actually found out on the 23andMe website also. And then it takes you to another one of my favorite websites, which is Snipedia. So you're going through the MTHFR support.com web report that you've generated, and you notice in an area that I don't mention anything about, you've got a whole lot of red SNPs, and you wonder what it means. This is the website that you go to see the PubMed reports that have been generated regarding these SNPs in this area. So SNPs stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. So it means in a single nucleotide, you can have one of two amino acids, and one is the wild type, and an alternate one is its polymorphic form that becomes then abnormal. So Snipedia is really a great way to research things. You can learn more about each SNPs, you can browse genotypes. This is all free. So there's one here, they're currently looking at the oxytocin receptor. So why don't we write that down? I don't have a pen. RS53576 is in the oxytocin receptor that influences social behavior and personality. So this is the one where you're either very, very sympathetic or you're on the autism spectrum. So let's go back to Jeff's report and see if they commented on this. RS53576. So we go to Jeff's report, which is, nope, keep getting back to my, here. So this is the kind of great thing that you can do with MTHFR. So you can, in the search, go RS53576. It doesn't report for that gene. Say you really want to know it because you've actually read some data about that. You can go right back to 23andme.com, log in, and ask them what your SNPs are on that.
I have the wrong.
My SNPs are GG for that. I just did it at 23.
So then you have to figure out which is the wild type. So let's go back to SNPedia and click on that SNP. Because which is the green and which is, the red. 23andMe doesn't give you that information. So a 53576 is a silent G to A change. Individuals with the G allele are more empathic. Did we need 23andMe to tell us that about you?
So will medical schools use this as a screening
No, but they probably should.
Right. So you see, you can sort of go in a circle. You can go to SNPedia and back to 23andMe, and Prometheus I particularly like. I was trying to find all my open windows here, just to finish up on how it's useful. What do I do with it? So this report that I give to patients, well, we'll go through it a little bit, but I'll put it in Dropbox, and one of you within a minute is going to come up with a better form of it. Where did my Prometheus report go? Just open it up again. Oh. So in Prometheus, the first thing I did when I got my 23andMe data was try to find out if I was going to follow in my mother's footsteps.
I was AG.
AG, so you're moderately compassionate.
A is for autism, G is for good.
Yeah. So on the Prometheus report, and this one actually does cost, Genetic Genie asks for a donation, and if you end up using it, I pay when I'm doing it for my patients. But on the interactive report, I wanted to find out if I was going to get breast cancer. So it looks at, of course, they put the bad ones up first. Increased risk of various types of cancer. Oh no, slightly shorter lifespan. Oh no, increased risk of breast cancer. But keep scrolling because I have a slightly lower risk of breast cancer. Oh, this isn't the best one. This is
Prometheus.
This is Prometheus.com. I can go down to medical conditions. Let's just cut to the chase here. And I go to breast cancer, and the number of genes they looked at, the preponderance were neutral, not having anything to do with breast cancer. A much greater number were green than were red.
You're going bald, though.
I am going bald, but what's really worse is I'm going to get testicular cancer.
When your kid, your son will.
Luckily, I didn't have a son, so she's okay. I don't have tyrosine anemia. Risk for the other. Interestingly,
Have genes for sciatica?
right. So the two that came out most red for me were things I've already had.
Wait. Frontotemporal lobe.
A dementia. This is terrible. I mean, that's a terrible condition to have. It obviously looks a lot like Alzheimer's disease. So you can click on it.
Green.
I know, so I'm fine, but we're not going to look at Jeff's there because, no, I haven't looked at Jeff's. You can then click on SNPedia, but don't do that. I didn't really want to leave this website.
Jesus, Michael, now they've got everything. How reliable are all these mappings?
Well,
have these really been all mapped that extensively?
What's really true is that the large part is gray, and if it's in green or red, it means that it has at least one study with one statistically significant clinical correlation. What I'd say is true is I have arthritis. I have it, even though I'm really healthy.
Do they have a separate one for osteoarthritis?
Let's see. Yep, and that's the one I have. And I had high blood pressure in pregnancy, and it says preeclampsia, but I didn't have that. So the two things for me that came out more red were actually, except for testicular cancer, are right.
So gray means they don't know.
Gray means it doesn't, as far as we know, it doesn't
Is it
have an
neutral
effect.
or-
It's neutral. Doesn't have an effect on that area.
It means that it's neutral. It doesn't mean that there are no studies.
It probably means, no, it does mean that there's no studies, there's no evidence. Right. It's not neutral.
There's
It
lack
means
of
that
evidence, or there's evidence?
There's
that's
lack of
neutral?
evidence.
there's lack of evidence.
It's in the gray zone. There's no evidence.
Okay, let's go back to Jeff's
So that's
report.
not your genes, that's neutral.
So the liver detox genes, there's a few that talk about estrogen. Some of these genes show up in two places, like Daryl's, his BHMT ones were not so good, and neither are Jeff's here, but they're going to show up again on methylation. And so you can go through this report.
There's DAO.
There's DAO. So you might, and I don't know what that means. I don't know. I imagine that has to do with DAO production. I don't know about that one. If I was doing this for somebody with histamine intolerance, that would take me right to SNPedia. G6PD, hey, you're okay. This is, well, I like to look at those. So a lot of these, I don't know what to do with them. I know what to do when they show up in a different part of the report, and we'll get there. Did this have the, so this is phase 1 liver detoxification, and they do several pages for that. And then this is phase 2 liver detoxification. So here are the glutathione related genes. So we could look at these GST genes, and I would tell Jeff based on this that you've got 2 of your genes in here are heterozygous. So you'd want to make sure that you're, paying some attention to glutathione precursors. If more of those were red, I said I would think it would behoove you to check your glutathione levels.
Take acetylcysteine.
And I have a whole handout for people that I attach, well, not necessarily, of 10 ways to boost glutathione. Exercise, whey protein, but now we have to watch what kind of cow it comes from. And look here's HNMT, here's the other. So you are actually quite heterozygous in these histamine genes. That's interesting. I never looked at those before. And this one doesn't do superoxide dismutase 2, which is in the genetic Gini report. So actually there's 3 things in genetic Gini that we can't get elsewhere. So then it goes on to yeast and alcohol metabolism. I don't really look at that. But where I do start looking is methylation and methionine homocysteine pathways. So this is incredibly complicated, and you can get some great tutorials at a couple websites. MTHFR.net is run by Ben Lynch, who's a naturopath who stumbled up against this and has done a tremendous amount of research and has 2- and 3-day seminars in Portland and around the country on this topic with other people teaching. And again, the most important thing they say is you still have to get the bottom line, you have to get your lifestyle right first. But he's taught me a little bit of caution that I want to share with you, and so he has another website, seekinghealth.com, and he has supplements because, I'll explain why. And then this is one I just found today, wholedetox.com, which is about methylation and estrogens, which I'm going to keep this one up. Let's close
What's
the
the
one.
name of this website?
This is just a PowerPoint presentation that I found, which is, as it is, whole-detox.com. And I would just search methylation and estrogens from Ben Lynch. I found his presentations are very good, very balanced, not hysterical, and very cautious. One of the things that I've seen around me from functional medicine doctors who got on this bandwagon early is not paying attention to what is to be learned from Dr. Ben Lynch or this website. So Ben Lynch and this guy, what's his name? We'll get to in a minute. He's an interventional cardiologist. He spends his morning putting stents in people, and he spends his afternoon, Dr. Roberts, trying to figure out how people to not need stents. And so on his website, heartfixer.com, what a great name, he has methyl cycle and detox genomic analysis, which he just updated less than a year ago. And it is, if you scrolled, it's probably 60 pages long, going through the methylation cycle, and he lists the genes separately, so you can go through the methylation genes, and then he has a lot of appendices about what to do with it. Both he and Ben Lynch suggest real caution when you're doing methyl cycle intervention, and they suggest that so a lot of people come to me with a lab test that they had a high homocysteine, so I don't take care of a lot of autistic kids. This is what happens. Somebody comes in with a high homocysteine, and their doctor ordered the MTHFR gene, which is one of the methylation genes. The first one that everybody knew about, the motherfucker gene. Oh, we just blew it for the web, putting this on the web. And it looks at two locations. It looks at MTHFR.1298C and C67T. And let's just look at Jeff here. He's homozygously abnormal for C677T. That puts him at increased risk for thrombosis and cardiovascular disease. So there's an intervention for this, but you're doctors, so you also know a lot of other things you can look at for thrombosis. You know, what's your fibrinogen? You're going to have to eat natto like Charlie does if your fibrinogen's level is high, because this is setting you up for thrombosis as well as other things. Remember the statistic that I gave you 2 days ago, that we methylate 3 billion times a second. And the methylation of the B vitamins is the main way that methyl groups get into our system, but then they go all over the place and relate to absolutely everything. What I tell someone, my first real success with MTHFR C677T homozygous was my brother, who has Huntington's disease, and he was quite disabled from it. And this test does not tell me whether or not he has Huntington's disease. It took a while to figure that out. But fixing his methylation problems vastly improved his energy. And when you're walking around dizzy and choreiform all the time, it helps to have energy, because it takes a lot of energy just to walk. And now he looks almost normal.
So what did you do? What was the intervention?
So the intervention,
Methylated
let's go to
folate B12
the report that I give to my patients.
Can we get the copy of that?
Yeah, I'll put this in Dropbox. If you are MTHFR C677, and this is Jeff, I'd say this is primarily related to folate metabolism. You particularly need methylfolate. So what I've seen the allopaths and some of the functional medicine doctors do is give people 5, 10, 15 milligrams of either methylfolate or Deplin. Deplin's kind of a dirty version of methylfolate, and getting it from a supplement manufacturer will give you a much cleaner version of it.
Deplin's got B12 and B6 also. No?
Deplin has other
Which
stuff
is
in
the
it
one?
too, and I know it's Metanx has all those in it.
Oh, right.
These genes, the MTR and the MTRR, are more specific for B12, but for any of these to work, it helps to take the load off parts of other parts of the system. So with a homozygous here, I would not only give you methylfolate, I'd give you methyl B12, and I'd give you B6 in its most useful form, which is pyridoxal 5-phosphate. And the milligrams change for that one. They don't change for the other two. And then it's important that you have adequate levels of zinc and magnesium, and an adequate level of zinc means you have more zinc than copper, not just that it's in the normal range. The B6, as I said, is pyridoxal 5-phosphate, and I start these individually. Now it helps a lot if I know, as we go through, okay. I start them individually. I have people start, well, not individually, I have them start B12 and P5P by themselves first for a week or two. I've never had anybody have adverse reactions to those medications. You take B12 any time of the day you want to, and chew it if you're over 50, or take it sublingually. Pyridoxal 5-phosphate you take at night, and do you know the big benefit you get if you have, so B6 or P5P is a cofactor for those 3 billion methylation processes that are happening every second. And if you're deficient in B6 or P5P and you replace it, do you know one of the first nice benefits is? Better sleep, and in that sleep, you have better dreams and you're more likely to remember them. So,
Whoa. I never remember mine.
so I bet that you're going to turn out to be using up that cofactor.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, so now I'm going to tell Jeff that he should be taking methylfolate, and then a week or two later I start him with methylfolate at a dose of...
Why at different times?
Pardon?
Why at different times?
Because people do react to methylfolate, and it's important to see if you're starting at the right dose.
What was the first thing you gave?
B12, methyl B12,
Just B12.
and P5P. And then a week or two later, I start with methylfolate, and I would start at either 400 or 800 micrograms. I would go higher if they were more, if he had a really high homocysteine and he were depressed. I'd go lower if he were quite anxious, or if he had an abnormal gene down here, COMT. I've had people get headaches and depression from starting them all at once. It's people this was before I kind of paid attention to what Ben Lynch said and really looked at the dose of methylfolate. I'm not depressed at all. I would start Jeff easily with 5 milligrams methylfolate. Okay, so now I've told him to take these 3 methyl vitamins. He says, okay, well, I'm just going to add them to my multi. Then I say, well, I have to look at your multi, because this multi, almost certainly for 99% of your patients, does not have methylfolate. It has folic acid. It does not have methylcobalamin. It has cyanocobalamin. And it has B6 in its, it does not have P5P. I describe it to people as if we want to get the methylfolate through the door of a very selective nightclub, and there's a bouncer or something like that, and the more folic acid that's crowding around the doorway to that nightclub, the less able the methylfolate is going to be to make it through the crowd. And the folic acid doesn't do any good for many of the processes that methylfolate is helpful. How do we know that? One of the main things that folate and B12 do, and one of the 2 big reasons kind of folic acid was essentially put in our water supply, it's really in our food supply, as you know, it's in processed foods, is neural tube defects, and they found out if they give people folic acid and B12, it lowers high levels of homocysteine, and homocysteine is a toxic amino acid, which is great if it keeps recycling, but it's bad if it accumulates. It's bad for your heart and your brain. If you lower it with B12 and folic acid, it does nothing for your heart and brain. So Dale Bredesen, in his interventions for people with cognitive decline, he likes to keep I think the sweet spot for homocysteine is between 5 and 7.7, to be precise. But below 5, you actually are at risk for peripheral neuropathy, and above 7.7, you're at risk for cognitive impact. And he does it with all methylated vitamins, and he has links to studies, and they use, C677T is also puts you at risk for depression, and it's the methylfolate that they use to treat it rather than just plain folic acid. So psychiatrists have now learned this, and they hand out Deplin, methylfolate plus some garbage, like candy, and for some people it's really not only helped their antidepressants work better, but for some people gotten them off their antidepressants, and particularly the people who would have C677T homozygous. And so if somebody's multivitamin has all the right stuff, I look at the doses they're taking and I'm saying, wow, these are a little bit low, but let's start checking things. A really sort of drive-by, look from the curb way of checking your methylation status is your homocysteine. But many things raise and lower your homocysteine, not all of which are good for you. So you go to doctor's data and you get a methylation panel. or you do the essential estrogens that we were talking about for women, and it shows whether or not you methylate your estrogen metabolites. The MTHFR genes are just a little bit farther down on this same page because it's all in alphabetical order. And I just scan this. Woo, MTR to MTRR. You've got a couple. Some people, are quite red and quite yellow in here. And I tell them that means I look at your multi. Oh, good. You're getting a whole milligram of methylfolate. That's good. You're getting 33 milligrams of pyridoxal 5-phosphate. That's great. You're only getting 1 milligram of B12, and it's oral. And you're over 50, I think you should supplement with a chewable methyl B12, which is something I just decided for myself because I take it orally, and my MCV went up from when I used to take it chewing, because now I have this great multivitamin that has all those things in it and some other stuff, but they stopped making it, so I'm shopping again. But you have a fair amount of heterozygous and homozygous in the MTR and MTRR, which we see from here really just has to do with B12.
The multivitamin, I just searched like multivitamin with methylfolate, and the first one that came up was like that website, the Seeking Health.
Seeking Health.
Is there other?
Thorn nutrient. So if you go to almost any of the pharmaceutical grade supplements, like all the ones I sell on my website, so Thorn, Designs for Health, yeah, there's lots of them. If they consider themselves a pharmaceutical grade supplement producer, they're cognizant, but they will also make some that don't have methylated forms. So let's scroll down to, let's find out what Jeff's COMT status is, because this is the one that makes me go most cautious.
Is this a report from MTHFR support?
This long one is here.
So mine only has the liver detoxes on it. Right?
Keep going, scroll down, it's 50 pages long.
Well, it says phase 1.
Phase 2, keep going.
Oh, it's 55 pages. Oh, never mind. It just stopped though before. Okay.
Finish downloading.
That's
So-
not a bit, yeah.
So I don't know where COMT is. Here it is. So COMT is back up in the liver detox. Oh no, those aren't the first. Those aren't the ones we want. Yeah, that isn't the one we want. We want COMT activity in here. Actually, it has its own whole section. So I don't look at all of the COMT genes. I look at the ones that have been studied enough so we know a little bit about what to do with them. And that would be the ones here. So let's look at his COMT V158M. V158M. No, it's not going to do it that way.
When you do this with your patients, what are you billing?
I spent here. Did you see the V?
It's the second one.
Oh yeah, right here. So he's heterozygous in that one, and another one so he's doubly heterozygous. I've got it kind of down. I do a bunch of them at a time, and I spend a half an hour. I tell them, you can generate this report on your own at home and bring it in, and I'll look at it with you, and I won't charge you anything extra. It's just going over a lab test. If you want me to generate the report, I'm going to charge you $40 for that, even though it only costs $30. And if you want my report that I'm going to put in Dropbox for you, I charge people $100 for that. Because the report's all written out with the suggested interventions, and I just have to change the language depending on what the findings are.
So you don't charge them to go over labs in your clinic?
I charge them like an office visit.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if we fill this in for him, this one is plus minus, and this one is plus minus. So when you're COMT positive, it's a mixed bag because it's a great exit path. COMT is a great exit pathway for homocysteine, so it has a good role in life. But when it's positive, it's not doing that exit pathway very well, and in the exit pathway, it is also recycling neurotransmitters as well as homocysteine. So when you have COMT positive, it's great. You have lots of dopamine. On the downside, you can have lots of adrenaline and lots of extra methyl groups, which makes the adrenaline sensitivity worse. So if you were plus on both of these, I would be very cautious about giving you that methylfolate. As a plus minus, I don't really know which way it goes, and the one way I can tell is looking up this gene. So there's two genes for the vitamin D receptor, TAQ and BSM, they're referred to. And if you have a genetic polymorphism there, you need to pay particular attention to vitamin D levels. And I have forgotten. I don't remember whether it has to do with absorption or hydroxylation or what it has to do with. But in my experience, people with VDR SNPs are the people that tell me, I take vitamin D all the time. I have a hard time bringing up my levels. So that's just something I have to look into. This particular, okay, this is really tricky. So this vitamin D receptor SNP, let's just say it is minus. Really good news, Jeff, except you're going to have to go to 23andMe and look this up because it's not on MTHFR support. Really good news, you have really good vitamin D receptors. You should be able to normalize your vitamin D. The bad news is, and I include this as a table in the report, which I know I just put it in here. If you have COMT plus minus and VDR minus, it behaves like COMT homozygously positive. It shifts it in the because VDR, because the vitamin D receptor interacts with this neurotransmitter recycling and metabolism, it pushes it essentially in the opposite direction of itself, which you can read the biochemistry about that on heartfixer.com. I just remember the shortcut for my patients. So if you were heterozygous COMT or if you were homozygous, I would know that you have the highest dopamine levels, which means dopamine is great. You have some protection from Parkinson's disease, and dopamine is great for our immune system, for toxins and microbes. Lowest need for and lowest tolerance for dopamine precursors, so quercetin, ginkgo, and tyrosine, which people take for energy. So if people tell you I took those but they really wired me too much, they're probably COMT positive. And the greatest susceptibility to mood swings and the lowest tolerance for methyl donors. So when people are COMT positive, these are the people that it backfires giving them high doses of methylfolate. So
I have my result for that.
what is it?
Oh, a couple.
It is, so I did that on here. Oh, I don't know. Oh, let's see, I do.
Have you done this?
Right, I did. RS 731236.
Like, it's gonna take a whole day.
You can actually put in the RS on 23andMe. A couple of what these others so as you go through the report, you can see how you would fill in this table. So we just know this is now a composite of our entire group. We're going to put red in here because Daryl's red. So his BHMT genes are homozygously abnormal, particularly if they're positive, but even if they're negative. So what they have BHMT is a wonderful exit pathway for homocysteine. Why do I care? I know time. I'll wrap this one up. Why do we care so much about homocysteine? Homocysteine is a real distraction from some of the other things these genes need to do. Something I never learned about, and Anne probably knows about, is a molecule called tetrahydrobiopterin, BH4, which is a precursor for neurotransmitters. And we lose our raw materials for making BH4 if we're very busy dealing with high homocysteine levels. So everything we can do to help our body deal with high homocysteine levels, that would be great. So let's just say whoever tests this had a high homocysteine level. I'd try them first with methylated B vitamins. But particularly if we had to go careful with the B vitamins and they were positive here, I would want to boost their BHMT enzymes because that's another exit pathway for homocysteine, taking some of the pressure off the system. Well, how do I do that? I don't know. I'm going to scroll through my report and see what I tell people. So, you know, all these I've obviously looked at before. So if it's needed to lower homocysteine, you can turn up BHMT. You can turn it up with trimethylglycine, which donates a methyl group. Oh, shoot. We can't donate a methyl group because I'm COMT positive and I have to be careful or I get too hyped and anxious. Little side here, and really I'm going to wrap this up. So if someone starts the methylated B vitamins and you start with what you think is a good dose and they're feeling great, and then if they have at all a tendency towards anxiety, I tell them to let me know if they feel anxious, and they take a methyl holiday for a while, and then they take other but safe forms of B12 and folate. So folic acid and cyanocobalamin are garbage. There's intermediate forms that are helpful to the body, but don't donate methyl groups, and that would be folinic acid, which is tetrahydrofolate, before it becomes methyl. So folinic acid, and you can buy that as a supplement. And then the two forms of B12 that are not methyl donors but are very helpful and kind to getting into the system are adenosyl and hydroxy B12. Hard to find, but you can get them. Okay, but this person, we can't give them trimethylglycine because they can't tolerate another methyl group. What they can tolerate is either phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine is Serifos. It's one of the things we give people who have too high levels of cortisol, who are too ramped up, and phosphatidylcholine, both which helps you, you know, people don't eat enough choline. You need to eat more egg yolks and eat liver. So it's a good source of choline, but it's one of the neurobeneficiary supplements that you can take, and one of the things I think listed in Dr. Bredeson's protocol. So I'll put my report, I'll put my report in our Dropbox. And at the end, I do it, and we can just, you know, you can keep scrolling through your MTHFR report. Okay, this is all COMT. Like one of the things, I'm just going to do the last thing. This is so, I just think this.
I created a folder called 23andMe.
Okay. Okay, Jeff, here.
Report live so we can put it downloaded and then enter our own information?
No, her one that she gives to the patients.
You can put your own information into it, and then
That's what I'm
you go through it and see if it makes sense to you.
Right, so we put our own pluses and minuses in.
Right, and then you're going to go through my report and where it says, so BHMT.
Right, we have to interpret ourselves.
And if you have any problems, write me. I mean, I don't want to do a full report.
I'll just put all my reports in our shared Dropbox.
Yeah, we have a shared one. So Jeff, you have ApoE2 and ApoE4, which means, I don't know how this works out if you have two. I think you'd be ApoE2.
Protection from 4.
2 protects you from 4, but there was a presentation at PaleoFX last year that
2, 4 is not great.
no, that 2 is sensitive to high, that your LDLP will go up with a high-fat diet with ApoE2. So that's the only caution there. You don't have the main thing I don't want to tell people is, pardon? It did. So
I have high total cholesterol.
it what?
I have high cholesterol.
You have high total
But it
cholesterol
went down.
on a high-fat diet. And then let's just see if you can eat gluten, and then we're done. So all the clotting factors, some of these we know what to do with, and so, factor 5, Leiden, celiac. So the most important ones are the CTLA, and I think I can't remember which of these latter two, but you have one homozygous. How do you do with gluten?
Fine.
Now, why do these affect gluten?
Pardon?
Why do these affect gluten sensitivity?
My brain doesn't know right now.
Okay.
I mean, I bloat.
So that's really more gastrointestinal than genetic. This is, so the CTLA4 is a setup for autoimmune disease. So it must have something to do with how well you make zonulin when you eat gluten. Okay, let me just, if there's, one of the reasons people don't like to get genetics is because you can go through this thing called something like NutriHacker. So here's the NutriHacker supplement visualization tool, which you and I think, I don't remember, you pay some money, I think $45, and you connect it to your genetics, and supplement visualization tool, what should I take? And the sort of fun thing about it, this is a good study tool, I should take CoQ10 because I have the CBS gene, and the gene function is that it adds serine to homocysteine to produce L-cystathionine. So it'd be good for me to take CoQ10 to work on that. But I bet if we went down, actually very particularly, vitamin B12, I have the MTHFR gene, so I should take methyl B12. But if I go down to what I should avoid, I bet I should avoid methyl B12. I have COMT, so I should avoid methyl B12 because it doesn't degrade, I don't degrade catecholamines very well. So that's where you have to have a practitioner who has taken the time to see some of the balances, knows where to say, I don't know about that, I'll let you know when I do. But the one that I understand pretty well that we went through a little bit today is this balance of methylation, giving you a benefit, and whether you personally explain through your genes or not are intolerant of it. And the bottom line for that is you don't use plain folic acid, and nobody should take folic acid, and nobody should take cyanocobalamin. And there's much better forms. And whew, any questions?
Oh, okay. One question.
One question. All right, I'm gonna make it into two. Two into one. Now, are there any resources for if you want to try to deal with this with just your diet? Things you can increase your diet.
Yes, and I talk about that in the report that I'll put in Dropbox.
And then can you just real quickly explain why you want someone to have their kind of diet in order before you do this? Because I think it would be a good motivating tool to.
Oh, no, I think in terms of having a healthy life, the best foundation you can lead for healthy life is to have your overall diet and lifestyle in order.
But you said you won't do this until that's the case.
Oh, I won't do it if they're wanting to do this instead of putting their diet and lifestyle in order. Right.
That is a way to motivate
So,
them.
you know, the best sources for methylated vitamins are dark leafy greens and organ meats. So, yeah, and then, yeah, so there's some dietary stuff, but some of them like that BHMT gene ramping it up, you can't do that with diet. It would help to eat eggs because it has choline, but you need to make it into phosphatidylcholine. Anyway, okay, so I'd be happy to, I'm going to put as much of this as I can in Dropbox, and I'd be happy to take some questions from people,
So
emails.
when you say you're putting it in Dropbox, you're putting it in the 2016 PAH Dropbox?
PAH. So I have a handout, I gave this talk once before at our local independent medical research group, which you should join, Southern Oregon's group. We talk about doing medical research on ourselves, and so I'm going to put the handout from that, or the outline I use from that talk, and the handout I give my patients. And happy to take some questions from you as we go on. Thank you all.